What we're talking about today is waste reduction and glass waste reduction in particular in the alcohol business. I don't know if that's good news or bad news for the Greek wedding planners, but that's what we're talking about today. And let me introduce you to the panelists. We have Matthew Tan, who is Legal and Compliance Director for Southeast Asia at Pernod Ricard, and Sui Ling Cheah, who is the Executive Board Chair for ecoSPIRITS. So Sui Ling, let's begin with you. Why don't you tell us about what ecoSPIRITS does and introduce the product, the ecoTote?
Sure. I'm not here to serve the drinks, just so you all know. Not yet. So essentially, I'd start with the numbers. So 70 billion glass bottles were manufactured last year for the wine and spirits industry alone. And these bottles, a lot of them, majority of them are single use. Some of them are recycled. Now, but the majority of them either end up in the landfill, where it takes thousands of years to degrade, or even if they're recycled, because glass is very expensive to produce, the heat that's required, the energy intensity, the fact that it's breakable is very costly and difficult to recycle. So it ends up being like less than even 20% that gets recycled, even in the developed world. So we came up with ecoSPIRITS, which essentially is, the mission is to end the use of single-use glass bottles. How? So for example, Absolut vodka gets manufactured in Sweden. And in the past, it would be, or as it is now, it gets manufactured there, it gets bottled in these iconic bottles, and then it gets shipped across the world. Now, in collaboration with our very treasured partner, Pernod Ricard, who is the company behind Absolut vodka, the vodka gets shipped in bulk we're present in 21 markets globally, and going up to 27 markets by the end of the year, proudly made in Singapore, founded in Singapore. So the vodka now gets shipped to Singapore. We have a containerized, semi-automated plant into us. So it gets shipped in 1,000-liter stainless steel vats. And so that saves significant amounts of shipping costs, and because glass is usually expensive to transport because of its weight, it now gets transported in bulk to our destination markets, and there it gets filled in these, what we call ecoTotes. And then from to us, we are now present in more than 400 bars and restaurants and hotels in Singapore alone. We distribute these ecoTotes with the vodka to these bars, where the consumer experience does not change. You still see this glass bottle at the bar, but when it's empty, the vodka gets dispensed from this tote at the back of the house. And then after this gets emptied, we take it back to the plant, where we clean it, we sanitize it, and refill it, and then that's why it's a circular. So we're essentially the world's first low-carbon circular distribution technology for the wine and spirits industry. I think I'll stop there for now.
Matthew, if you could talk to us about the pilot rollout in Singapore and what the impact really has been for Pernod Ricard in terms of waste reduction.
Yes, so I think we started the pilot a few months ago, and we started primarily with 3 of our products, Havana Club, Absolut, and Beef Eater Gin. So I think across the last few months, we've rolled out to about 31 bars with our products, and I think we've saved about 3,000 bottles so far. It's still small, right? But we definitely have plans to scale it up. So the whole process of getting the technology validated, I think, took about 18 months for us to ensure the product security as well as integrity, and to ensure that the whole process actually works. So this pilot is really a test to roll it out, but we are actually in the process of working with ecoSPIRITS on rolling out a global agreement that will roll our product, ecoSPIRIT and our products across the rest of the world.
Which countries are you targeting at this stage?
We don't have a specific countries yet. We're still negotiating on the global agreement, but we intend to roll out where all our products are across the world. Yeah.
So Sui Ling, this seems like a pretty commonsensical sort of solution, right, to reducing glass waste in the spirits business. What are the challenges of developing the product, scaling it? What were the challenges while you were doing that?
To be honest, I mean, because there is no distribution technology that's low carbon at the moment, we've had very strong interest. So we now see, we have two segments of customers. One is the likes of Pernod Ricard, the world's largest spirit companies that have committed to net zero. Because for each bottle that uses our solution, we save about ½ kilo of carbon. And actually this tote itself, you look at this tote, we actually can use up to 1,000 bottles for this particular tote. So and then for each cycle of tote, we plant a tree in Borneo, and we've planted about 35,000 trees so far. And so Pernod is one of our brands. We have about 150 brands in our stable at the moment. And there are a few more hundreds in the pipeline. So actually the scale is trying to be able to grow as fast as our customers want us to grow in the many markets that they're in. And a couple more numbers, so because why do they like us? It's not really just because we are, obviously the green bit is the overriding factor, but at the end of the day, why is it an overriding factor? Is also because we save up to 60, depending on where the spirits are being manufactured, we save up to 90% in carbon emissions. We save 95% of glass and paper of waste. And so, and 30 grams of carbon per cocktail. So even, we are in the Savoy Hotel in London, for example, and there is a low carbon menu, and the cocktail that has low carbon using ecoSPIRITS as the bottling technology is the best-selling cocktail in the history of the bar. And so we know that consumers are very willing to adopt the solution as well. But we just do B2B at the moment because that's where the biggest impact is. So, but going back to your question, it's really being able to grow as fast as our customers want us to go.
And I guess this question is to both of you. Can you really apply this model to every spirit out there, to every kind of alcohol, or is it limited to certain ones right now?
So for spirits, yes, because the inside of this, so it's tamper-proof. We actually have what we call a smart pour technology that is also Internet of Things using RFID. And so we can do track and trace. And the inside is actually glass, and so the spirits actually come in glass, right? So we can use, for example, for any kind of spirit, and we've actually been certified by the French organic wine authorities as well to do wine, and so for both wine and spirits we can do.
So right now, what's Pernod Ricard doing in terms of the rollout?
We've actually just recently finished the pilot, so we are taking the studies of the pilot to sort of figure out how to further roll out this thing. And as I said, we have a global agreement to really review how we're going to roll in all the markets with the different milestones which we are still negotiating. But the idea is that we also intend to potentially increase the number of products. Currently, we are at 3 of our brands. We've got a few hundred brands, so we're going to increase the number of brands that we're going to be working with ecoSPIRITS on. And really, that is how we hope to scale this across the rest of the world as well, not just within Singapore. Singapore is just the initial test market, but we tend to roll it out for the rest of the world.
So we have both the bigger brands, as I mentioned, the likes of Pernod Ricard, and we also have a stable of smaller brands. And actually, for them, the cost savings and the waste savings are actually even higher because they don't have the economies of scale that's required to do all the bottling. So actually, we have a long tail of those brands as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we're now in Singapore, we're over 400 bars, but globally we've got 2,000 bars and hotels. Likes of Four Seasons, Rosewood, they are big supporters. And I have to say, shout out to Pernod Ricard, who's also invested in the company, which is, and I would say Pernod Ricard is extremely open-minded with regards to the platform. The spirits companies, they compete fiercely, but Pernod Ricard is using our platform and has also, it's essentially the platform is agnostic. So we are open to Diageo and all the other big brands that are also competitors of Pernod Ricard, but for the good of the planet, they've been supportive of our rollout.
Yes, I believe to us, circularity is something that is not just confined to our company, but really something that we encourage as part of innovation as well as across the entire industry. So we are very happy for to work with ecoSPIRITS, even with our competitors as well, because we believe that's how we really bring about change.
So why ecoSPIRITS? Why did you decide to take a stake in the company?
I think, firstly, ecoSPIRITS is one of those, it is a very unique company, right? So the idea of reusing and everything, it's not something that is particularly new. But I think for ecoSPIRITS, they've demonstrated through our tests that they are able to ensure that our product integrity, security, and of course, how the bottles are being reused and everything, because as some of you may be aware, there are counterfeit alcohol issues in some of the other countries. So this is really a significant risk for us if we were to work with other parties. In terms of scalability, I think ecoSPIRITS has the ability to really scale it across the world. As I said, we're not just looking to do it in Singapore. So I think that's why when we looked at what they were offering, we could really work with them and to bring this to a much larger level.
Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you do have numbers for us, what kind of emissions reduction are you seeing and cost reduction are you seeing now because of using eco-totes?
Well,
have you been able to quantify that?
We don't really have absolute numbers, but we're looking at about 50 to 60% at least reduction in the glass waste, depending on the number of users for the glass bottles.
And depending on the brand as well, right?
Depending on the brands as well, because I think some of our brands have stricter controls in terms of the number of users. So perhaps that would reduce some of the numbers. So but it would at least be about 50 to 60% reduction in all glass waste.
So when thinking about circularity in the alcohol business, what else can alcohol brands do, or are they doing at this stage to reduce waste and bring in a more sustainable angle to their business?
Sorry, can you repeat it?
What more are alcohol brands considering right now in terms of sustainability, in terms of waste reduction?
Okay, so other than the reusable model, which is what ecoSPIRITS is, we are actually exploring glass recycling. So I think in Singapore, we recently had first glass recycling facility. So we are really, we started a pilot even with at a trade association level to explore how to do glass recycling in Singapore, right? And that is something that we are very excited about. We've not actually proceeded with that yet, we're still at the exploratory stage. But really, this is something that we hope to push glass waste in Singapore.
How successful has that been so far? Have you been able to, because the National Environment Agency, they came out with some numbers in 2022. I think only 6% of plastics were recycled in Singapore and just 14% of glass waste. So it's quite a difficult material to recycle as well. So yeah, how successful has that been?
Well, like I said, we're at the exploration stage, but because the news about the glass recycling facility just came early part of this year, so we've actually started the studies on how we can create a pilot around glass recycling. But definitely that is something that we are hoping to support the Singapore government as well, because the landfill situation in Singapore is fairly dire. I believe we will run out of space by 2035. So that's where we really hope to support, in our way, the glass waste in Singapore.
Okay, thank you. I think we can take some questions from the audience now. Meg, are there any questions?
You kind of answered this question, but I will. This way of recycling bottles in the spirit business is excellent. Do you see that it can be adopted by Coca-Cola and the likes?
I'm not in the Coca-Cola space. But I actually think, the thing about Coke is that at least the bottles are one kind, right? Whereas in the spirits industry, you've got absolute vodka that looks like this, and you've got different kinds of spirits that have different shapes and sizes. It's just harder to make it circular or recycle that way. But I think, I can't speak for Coke, actually, sorry.
And also, in general, they did ask, are there other industries that you can see that could benefit from the technology and infrastructure of ecoSPIRITS?
So we are focused on a product that is quite premium, where we can actually make a difference, where there's premium and there's volume. I'd have to say, for other kinds of consumer, let's see, how well we scale in the next few years, and then see how it can be applied elsewhere.
How do you ensure the contamination risk when bars refill themselves into the glass bottle?
That's how when we get vetted by the likes of Pernod Ricard, these are the things that we look out for. And actually, so this, for the Absolute vodka that uses our technology, we have an RFID that actually matches to the tote itself, and that it can only be dispensed, like an Absolute tote can only be dispensed into an Absolute bottle. So we try to, these are the kinds of measures that we've put into place to make sure to reduce the contamination, etc. Actually, the one thing I would have to say is that, for a lot of the brands where counterfeiting is an issue, where, an empty bottle of Chivas or Absolute is worth more than a full bottle in certain markets. Making it into an eco-tote actually makes it a lot harder for counterfeiting as well.
Last question. What is the expected number of green job opportunities that you believe will be created through this initiative?
I'd have to say not many. I mean, we are a B2B, very capital efficient business. And so, we are only a team of 30, but we are now in, 21 markets. So it's actually an extremely capital efficient business that's able to scale.
Thanks, Meg, for the questions. I have one last one. What do you price that at? How expensive is that?
Very cheap. There are now about 60,000 totes in circulation already. Yeah. So it depends on how many you buy. So you can buy it for $50. We're trying to actually make it, because as we scale even more, it's actually economies of scale, right? We can try to reduce the prices as much as we can.
Okay, good answer. Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you for your insights, Sui Ling and Matthew.